Noah Laba has made the New York Rangers out of training camp. We tell you why this was an excellent decision.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1396 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we did an episode a little bit earlier today, Monday morning to be exact. It is now Monday night, and we now know the full New York Ranger roster heading into tomorrow night's opening night clash with the Pittsburgh Penguins. And really, between the last time we talked and now, there was only one more battle that was still left to be decided, and that was which two of these three players were going to get on to the opening night roster. Conor Sheary, Noah Laba, and Brett Berard. We now know that Brett Berard is the odd man out. More on that in a little bit. But I want to start with the guy that honestly is the man of the hour and really the talk of the town as far as Ranger fans are concerned in the preseason. And that would, of course, be Noah Laba. You know, we coming into training camp this season, I feel like if you were to ask any one of us, if we were told straight up that, like, okay, only one of the Ranger rookies, one of the really young guys, was going to end up making this opening roster, who do you think it's going to be? I think a lot of us probably would have said Brett Berard. I think Gabe Pro certainly would have gotten some votes as well. Maybe Brandon Hoffman a little bit. And, Scott Morrow, I think if you want to throw a defenseman in there, I think all four of those players probably going into the rookie camp and the rookie series and the training camp in the preseason, those four probably for most of us would have been more likely to crack this opening night roster than anybody else. And I think a lot of those players also played well, but none of them were as good as Noah Laba, and good for him. He was somebody that I wouldn't say he was a complete afterthought coming into training camp this season, but certainly, like we just said, there were other prospects that had considerably more buzz than Noah Laba did. Didn't stop him from making the team, didn't stop him from obviously creating an impression. And he was somebody that was getting to turn at least some heads coming into the preseason. But if the door was only slightly cracked for Laba, he made sure to kick it down. And good on him. Props to him for taking advantage of an opportunity and essentially leaving the Rangers with basically no choice but to include him on the opening night roster and very likely in the opening night lineup as well. There were some comments from Mike Sullivan regarding Noah Laba. This was earlier in the day on Monday, probably like late morning, maybe early afternoon, somewhere around there, where, reporters are asking questions, and he's obviously asked about Noah Laba. And Sullivan at that time stopped short of saying that Laba was definitely going to make the opening night roster, but it felt like he was going to be there. I mean, honestly, it's felt like he was going to be there for a while, but based on what Sullivan said, I don't have the exact quote in front of me right now, but he basically was non-committal about Laba making the roster. But then he said, yeah, we've been really, really impressed with him. That was basically the long and short of what Sullivan said. So that was a pretty big clue right there that Laba would eventually make the cut. And then a little bit later in the day on Monday, we did indeed get that confirmation that Laba had, of course, made the team. And again, props to him for not being the guy with the draft pedigree, former fourth rounder, not being the guy that, everybody's buzzing about, and obviously not a household name yet, unless you're a diehard Ranger fan. If you're, just kind of a hockey fan, you probably don't know too much about this kid, but obviously we hope that he starts to make a name for himself and does a great job and takes advantage of this opportunity that he has earned for himself. And he's earned it by basically doing a little bit of everything and doing a little bit of everything very, very well throughout this entire process, the entire offseason, preseason, rookie camp, training camp, the whole 9 yards. This guy, something that really stands out for me is his forechecking and his back checking. This guy is absolutely busting it up and down the ice on every single shift. And I realize as I say that that's one of those things that should be expected. It's one of those things that should be mostly a given, on most nights. But we know that it's not, and we certainly know that it's not from watching this Ranger team this past season. So when you find a guy that's constantly busting his tail on every single shift, flying up the ice, flying down the ice, even this most recent game against the Bruins in the preseason here, where obviously the Rangers didn't play very well, the Bruins had what looked like it was going to be a very good scoring opportunity off of the rush. And there's Noah Laba once again busting it on the back check, breaking up the play, and then jumping back into the forecheck and going the other way. This guy just does not stop. He plays physical. He fights for pucks. He'll go to the dirty parts of the rink as well. A little bit bigger than the average NHL forward. I mean, he's not going to go out there and tower over people, but he does have good size and seemingly good physicality as well. You're describing Laba's game right now. I'd also like to make a point. It's a point that I've made in the past, but it's probably been about 50 or so episodes since I've said this. So we'll throw it out there again for anybody that might be new. Contrary to what a lot of people think, I don't think it's this impossible Herculean task for professional athletes to win over the fans of New York teams. Now, it is true. We can be a little dramatic at times. We can be a little bit emotional with our reactions. But honestly, New York fans, and specifically Ranger fans, this is really what we ask of you. You bust your tail. You get everything you've got in every single game that you play. Effort always has to be there. That's number one. Number two is you are accountable when things are going badly. And if you do those two things, that's like 90% of the battle with New York fans. I might have some people that disagree with me on that, but I really think that does carry you a long way in the eyes of New York fans, and in this case, specifically Ranger fans. And Laba, again, this looks like somebody where effort is never going to be an issue with him, and obviously we hope that that's the case. It's interesting, too, because we found out just a couple hours before we knew that Laba was making the team that he was going to be the recipient of the Lars-Erik Sjoberg Award. This is given annually to the top Ranger rookie in training camp, and it's voted on by the media members. And, there's certain seasons where I would imagine that might be a difficult task. You've got multiple rookies that really stand out, or, maybe it's one of those training camps where, maybe there's not one that really stands out, and it's kind of a veteran team, and who's going to make the team, and there's not a surprise addition to the roster like there is with Laba here. But this year, man, I mean, this had to be as easy as pie. Who else would you have picked? Now, that's not to say there weren't other Ranger rookies that played well. I thought Gabe Perreault was very good. Brett Berard was his usual tenacious self out there as well. Even Morrow, I thought, showed pretty well for himself. But, man, I mean, this had to be Laba this season. I just don't know how you could vote for anybody else at this point. And the other thing that I think worked in Laba's favor here as far as why he made the Rangers, couple of things, really. Again, that big opening at third line center. You could go with Parsonen, you could go with Brodzinski, but neither one of them feel like, big time bona fide long-term solutions or maybe even short-term solutions, whereas Laba could certainly be one of those things. And on top of that, the Rangers carrying 14 forwards to start the season, that also worked in Laba's favor. And as we've been talking about on here, there was a way to squeeze Noah Laba onto this roster without also having to waive a veteran. And we can tell now for sure that the Rangers clearly did not want to waive any of their veteran forward players, the guys that would be exposed to waivers if they had done so. That's why you see guys like Gabe Perreault and Brett Berard not making the team. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about Berard a little bit later in today's episode because he was the last player cut. But again, assuming that the Rangers were going to carry 14 forwards, which they are now going to do, and assuming that Othmann, Perreault, and Berard would not make the team, which they have not, there was always a spot for Laba, and he went out there and he earned it, and good on him for doing that. As far as how he's going to be used, the first couple of games here, I mean, again, I would imagine that he's going to be the third line center. I honestly find it difficult to believe that he would line up in really any other spot in the lineup. I mean, I don't think they're going to put Carrick on the third line and drop Laba to the fourth line. I mean, that wouldn't really make any sense. And the top six is pretty well spoken for. He's not going to center one of the top two lines. So that's the spot for him, third line center. And you got to believe on opening night, and probably for at least a couple of games after that as well, he will be out there in between Conor Sheary, who also made the team. We're going to talk about him in a little bit, and Taylor Radish, who was a free agent pickup by the New York Rangers. Now, we'll see how that line fares. I know right now, when you look at the Ranger bottom six, it is a little bit underwhelming, especially in terms of any kind of offensive punch. But maybe some of these guys can surprise us a little bit. We have to keep our fingers crossed and hope that that is the case. And maybe Noah Laba can keep everything going in the regular season, basically pick up right where he left off in the at the end of the preseason here. Now, again, probably third line center. You've also got to figure that I don't think he'll be in line for special teams work. Penalty kill is possible. Don't think he'd be one of the first couple of forwards that they put out there. Power play, I mean, he's not going to be on the top power play. We know that. Second power play, don't even think that'll happen, at least not right away. But don't rule it out. I mean, he did play in both of those roles during the preseason. Obviously, part of that is that the Rangers don't dress all of their regular players for all the preseason games. But, at times he looked good in both of those roles, scored a power play goal in the most recent one. He was also on the ice when the Rangers gave up a power play goal to the Bruins. He was one of the penalty killers out there. But, again, overall, great job by Noah Laba. Let's have some fun with this. He earned this spot. He deserves it. I think a lot of Ranger fans, myself included, were certainly rooting for him. And really, you look at the Ranger preseason, in a lot of ways, I think it kind of underwhelmed. I wouldn't call it a complete disaster either. Maybe just a little bit underwhelming. But again, we talked about this in the last episode. Noah Laba's emergence, one of the most fun and interesting and just downright cool storylines to come out of training camp this year and the preseason this year. And obviously, everything that Laba did has bared fruit, so to speak, and he's made this Ranger team against all odds going in. I don't think too many people had him for an opening night roster spot, but he's there in the top 9, and he absolutely deserves it. So in just a second, he was not the only Ranger whose fate was kind of hanging in the balance today. We also have to talk about Conor Sheary, came to the Rangers on a PTO and was able to make the team. We'll talk about whether that was the right decision or not in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you will unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. FanDuel is the best because there are so many different ways to bet. Whether you like those same game parlays or you're kind of into player props or, you've got your favorite team on, you want to bet for them, you want to bet against them, or you just got a certain hunch that you just feel like you have to act on, FanDuel's got something for you. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. On Locked On New York Rangers, big shout out to the everydayers. Thank you guys so much for sticking with this podcast. In our next episode, take a wild guess. Yeah, we're going to talk about Rangers and Penguins. They obviously play each other Tuesday night, opening night. And you know what? Let's just see the Rangers start the season 1-0. We need a small win here, and I think that would obviously qualify. And whatever happens, we'll be back here to break it down in the next episode. But we got here. We made it. Ranger hockey is officially back. Cannot wait for the puck to drop for Rangers Penguins. But let's go ahead and keep talking about these final roster decisions made by the Rangers, including this, which is Conor Sheary making the team on a PTO or off of a PTO, however you want to phrase it. He was in camp on a PTO, and obviously we know that can go either way. On Monday, we find out that Sheary has made the team, and he has signed a one-year deal with the Rangers for $775,000. It was sort of the same thing as what we saw with Laba, where we didn't know for sure what was going to happen, which guys were going to make the team and which guys weren't going to make the team as of, earlier today on Monday. But like Laba, we also got what I consider to be a little bit of a clue that Sheary was going to make the team. And that is the very simple fact that at practice today, they had Sheary out there as a member of the second power play unit. Now, on one hand, that probably doesn't really seem like that big of a deal. I mean, it's just practice, right? It's the second power play. They barely play anyway. Maybe they'll get a little bit more time under Sullivan than they did under other coaches, during this recent era of Ranger hockey. But just the fact that Sheary was included on the second power play unit this late in the game, that to me told me he has made this team. Because why would you even bother? The 6 preseason games have come and gone. Why would you bother if he wasn't going to be on the team? You're wasting practice reps from somebody else who's going to be on the team. You're taking it away from somebody else who's going to be on the team on opening night, and you're giving it to somebody that you're going to release from his PTO. Didn't seem very likely to me. So when I saw Sheary out there on the second power play today, or saw the report that he was out there on the second power play, pretty much a slam dunk at that point, at least for me, that Sheary was going to be out there. I think that made sense. And indeed, Sheary has made the team. It's funny because when we got the announcement, we got the news that Sheary was with the Rangers, he was on a PTO, he's going to try to make this team. right from the moment I heard that, really honestly, all the way up to today when they announced that Sheary had indeed made the team, I felt like he was going to make it. And looking at the lay of the land and all the different veterans that the Rangers had, the veteran forwards and some of the young guys that are trying to crack the team, at times the math didn't really appear to math. But at the same time, I just kind of a gut feeling. I felt like Sheary would eventually make this team, would eventually get on there. I always felt like he deserved better than what he got last season, playing 5 games with Tampa in the NHL and playing 59 AHL games with Syracuse. I mean, not that Sheary's like a superstar player. Obviously, he's not. But I don't know, man. To me, he's a player that deserves more than that. I thought overall, he took the bull by the horns this preseason. He had to. We've talked about this before, too. Anybody that's in camp on a PTO, whether it's with the Rangers or anybody else, you obviously have to put your best foot forward, because every night of the preseason, for you at least, is game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, because you're trying to make the team. You're trying to crack the roster, keep your NHL career going. And obviously, Sheary was able to do this. I do feel like Sheary, he played in 4 preseason games. I feel like he maybe stood out a little bit more in the first 2 than the last 2, but it's not like he played, poorly in the last 2. Overall, you see some good things. He's got good speed for a Ranger team that did not have a lot of speed last season. Seems to have, a little bit of bulldog in him. He's not the biggest guy out there, but he does compete hard. He's made some really nice passes in the preseason as well, and seemed to work well with the younger Ranger forwards. I believe it was Gabe Perreault who got to skate on Sheary's line, and he was really putting him over, as he knows what he's doing out there, and he was great to me and all this good stuff. So having an extra veteran, not the worst thing in the world, but I think we also have to acknowledge that the clock is definitely ticking when it comes to Sheary and the other role-playing veteran forwards on the New York Rangers. There's basically 4 of them that I've been lumping together, and we can now include Sheary in this group of 4 officially now that he has made the team. But you've got Sheary, you've got Radish, you've got Brodzinski, you've got Parson. All 4 of these guys have made the team, and I think that it's looking like Sheary and Radish will be the 2 that are out there on opening night, and the other 2 will probably be healthy scratches. But those 4, I mean, they got to bring it. They got to keep their foot on the gas, because there are, as we know, a lot of young, exciting New York Ranger forwards who are coming along still early in their careers. They've all got NHL experience. We're talking about Othman, Perreault, and Berard. Eventually, those guys are going to get called up. And if somebody's called up, I mean, somebody's got to go, right? I mean, unless there's an injury. But, you just get the feeling that not all 4 of those guys, Brodzinski, Parson, Radish, and Sheary, who we're talking about here, are going to make it through the season on the Rangers roster. And if they do, it probably means that they're playing very well. And at that point, that's a good problem to have. But, overall, again, I don't dislike this move of hanging on to Conor Sheary for now. I know some people are going to have a problem with it because they'd rather see one of the kids get a chance. And I completely understand that. But again, this carries 0 risk. If Sheary delivers and overperforms, awesome. That's good for the Rangers. If he falters, if he struggles, if he's not producing, if he's a liability, then he's on borrowed time anyway. And the Rangers can waive him, and either somebody claims him or he goes to the AHL, and none of his cap would count against the Rangers salary cap. And you'd call up one of the kids and you're good to go. So really, there's nothing much to lose by doing this, other than the fact that, it does potentially prevent, a Brett Berard or a Gabe Perreault from making the roster right now. But it feels like the Rangers wanted them to develop a little bit more in the AHL regardless. So it's fine. It's fine. I think we're in a good spot right now with Conor Sheary making this team. And honestly, those 4 veterans that I mentioned, if I was going to kind of rank them right now as far as how I feel about them, I'd probably go Sheary, Brodzinski, Parson, and Radish. Radish right now, to me, if Brett Berard was going to make this team, and we'll discuss this more in a little bit, but if one of those kids was going to make this team, one of the other kids, and one of these veteran forwards had to be the odd man out, my vote would be for Radish. And I feel like maybe what's going on here, Drury signed him to this contract. Maybe they still want him there. I mean, that's possible. He's a depth forward, that he is what he is. But I also feel like there's no way he was going to be the odd man out. There's no way that they were going to waive Radish, because it would look bad on Drury that this guy didn't even make it through didn't even make the team, through the preseason. Couldn't hold off Conor Sheary on a PTO, Parson, Brodzinski. I don't think that would have looked very good. And on top of that, Radish is making $1.5 million, which is not an enormous amount, but approximately, if he were to be placed on waivers and clear and go to the Wolfpack, I believe it would be $350K that would still be on the books, counting against the salary cap for the Rangers. Would not be a good look for Drury and company, but we'll see. Again, these things have a way of sorting themselves out. I think when the kids are ready to be called up, one or two of them, whatever it might be, we'll have a better idea by then which one of these Ranger forwards deserves to be on the outs, and the Rangers will probably act accordingly when that situation comes. But in just a second, we're going to keep everything rolling. I want to talk a little bit about Brett Berard being the final Ranger cut from training camp this year, and he'll head to the Hartford Wolfpack. We'll have some thoughts on that, talk about whether that was a good idea or not, and also updates on injuries for both Artemi Panarin and JT Miller. We'll get to all that good stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire somebody yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy, just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your posts at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. We've all been in that position where you need to hire somebody like yesterday. The pressure is on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed sponsored jobs come in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. Indeed is all that you need. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers by talking a little bit about the injury updates to both Artemi Panarin and JT Miller, and then we'll also have some thoughts on Brett Berard being cut as well. As far as Panarin, I mean, we kind of know the story so far. He missed the entire preseason, didn't play any of the preseason games, got hurt relatively early, and obviously, the Rangers didn't want to chance anything. They didn't want to push anything. He has been practicing. It sounds like he is no longer wearing the non-contact jersey or anything like that. It's not a perfect situation when you have, I would say, anybody miss all 6 preseason games. Not ideal. But if there's a player on the Rangers who can probably do just fine and start the regular season, and you would never know that he missed the entire preseason, it probably is Artemi Panarin. This guy is going into his 7th season as a member of the New York Rangers. He's led the team in points every single season that he's been here. He is obviously familiar with the guys that he's probably going to line up with on opening night, that being Vincent Trocheck and Alexis Lafreniere. I mean, he can get power play points in his sleep. I think Artemi Panarin is going to be just fine. Would have liked to have seen him get out there for at least a game or two, but it didn't happen. Hopefully there's no rust, and hopefully he's ready to rock as soon as opening night on Tuesday against the Pittsburgh Penguins. I think Panarin will be just fine. As far as JT Miller, played in just the one preseason game. That was on September 25th, and he lost to the Islanders. So by my count, I think it's now been 12 days since JT Miller last played. Again, like Panarin, it's not ideal, but it also just wouldn't make any sense to put one of your star players, force them into a preseason game if they've got an injury that is even the slightest bit concerning. That applies to Panarin. It applies here as well to JT Miller. And, even though the Rangers, I'll say this too, even though the Rangers had a rough preseason, and again, it wasn't a complete catastrophe, but I think you were looking for a little bit more from certain players. You got to keep in mind, they played 6 preseason games, 1 game for JT Miller, 0 for Artemi Panarin. Now, preseason or not, this team was down its 2 best forwards, the 2 guys that are probably going to lead the Rangers in points this upcoming season in those 2 games. Not to say that, that would have cured everything and the Rangers would have gone 6-0 in the preseason and we'd all be feeling awesome, but they were missing their 2 best players for basically just about the entire preseason here. So that is worth, I think, at least acknowledging. But now that we know the roster, I'm thinking we can go ahead and talk a little bit about the opening night projection. Basically just going to go by how the Rangers lined up. There we go. How the Rangers lined up in practice a little bit earlier today here, what the line combinations were. And I feel like this is very likely what we're going to see on opening night as well. So the top line, or what was at least listed as the top line left to right, you've got Will Cooley, JT Miller, Mika Zibanejad. No surprises there. I think that having Mika with JT Miller makes a ton of sense. The 2 of them had chemistry last year. They've both voiced that they'd like to stay together this year. And Will Cooley, I mean, you could put him just about anywhere, but I like seeing him on the top line as well. The second line, Panarin, Trocheck, and Lafreniere. We know how lethal this line was 2 seasons ago. This past season, not so much. It was one of many, many different aspects of this Ranger team that were nowhere near as good as the season before. But I'd like to see what these guys can do for an encore. I'd like to see if they can get back to the level that we saw 2 seasons ago, or at least somewhere in that ballpark. Because when these guys are clicking, they are dangerous and they are skating circles around their opponents. So hopefully the three of them can find it together again. Then you've got the third line here. We did talk about this a little bit earlier in the episode. Left to right, you got Sheary, Laba, and Radish. And, again, we're going to talk more about Berard in just a second. I would like to have seen Berard in that spot for Radish. We'll elaborate on that in just a minute, though. Everything else is fine and what it should be, probably. Left to right on the fourth line, Edstrom, Carrick, and Rempe. Honestly, this seemed like the likely fourth line for this season as soon as, halfway through last season. This is one of the few enjoyable aspects of the Ranger team last year. It's not to say these guys were world beaters or they were producing all this offense and stuffing the score sheet every single night. But for the most part, this is a blue-collar, physical, hard-hitting, grinded-out kind of line, and that's what you want from your fourth liners. I know that Carrick can drive you crazy every once in a while because he'll take a penalty that he doesn't need to take. And, people have mixed feelings on Rempe and Edstrom still coming along. But for the most part, I enjoyed watching this line last season. I thought it was one of the more enjoyable aspects of the team. And they all feel like fourth liners. Now, could Edstrom and even Rempe, could they eventually get above that at some point in their career? It's possible. I don't think we're there yet, though. And to me, this is a no-brainer to keep these three together. This is your fourth line going into the season. As far as the defensemen, Gavrikov and Fox, I mean, I know they scrambled the pairings a couple of days ago. And they had Vakanainen with Fox and a couple of other things they were doing differently as well. But the smart money, and you could always make changes as you have to as the season goes on. But the smart money was always on these two being together. I think this is pretty much why you pick up Vladislav Gavrikov and give him the contract that the Rangers gave him. The second pairing, you got Susie and Borgen. I would like to see Schneider in the top four and preferably in place of Susie. Now, I realize that Schneider would have to change sides, but getting him those minutes, getting him in a more prominent spot in the lineup and dropping Susie down to a less prominent spot, I'd be willing to at least give that a shot. But it looks like the Rangers are not going to go in that direction. They will have Susie and Borgen as the second pairing. And then the third pairing, Vakanainen and Schneider. I mean, by default, those are going to be the two most likely that were the third pairing. And then Igor and Quick are obviously your goalies. And that means that the healthy scratches on opening night will very likely be Juuso Parssinen, Johnny Brodzinski, and Matthew Robertson. Now, at practice today, Brodzinski was not there, and Brett Berard was, but that's before Berard got cut. And as far as Brodzinski not being there, I know some people, eyebrows kind of went up, and they're wondering, maybe Brodzinski didn't make the team. As it turns out, though, and this news broke a day or two ago, but Johnny Brodzinski and his family have welcomed their third child. So a big congratulations to the Brodzinski family. That's why he was not at practice, but he has made the team. Even though he has, though, I feel like he's very likely going to be one of the two healthy scratches as far as the forwards are concerned, alongside Juuso Parssinen on opening night. We'll be very surprised if it goes any other direction. And I'm glad Brodzinski made the team. He's kind of become a personal favorite of mine. Took him forever to become an NHL regular, and I do think he plays hard. And that would have been rough to get cut like a day, 2 days after welcoming your third child. I mean, if you're the Rangers, I guess you have to do what you have to do. But the timing, if they were going to cut Brodzinski, could not have possibly been any worse. But Brodzinski made the team, and good on him for doing that. We'll see how the Rangers look to use him moving forward. But, we've been touching on Berard off and on throughout the entire episode a little bit. Want to talk about him being the final cut. It is unfortunate. I'd like to personally have him on the team over Radish right now, but as we mentioned earlier, I just don't think the Rangers are going to do that. They're not going to admit a mistake or failure of any kind by waiving Radish this early in the game, and they're going to play him out there on opening night. But when you look at Brett Berard, what he did last season and what he did in the preseason, and you compare him to Radish, who, I mean, at best, the guy's a depth forward. I mean, he's never really been any kind of a scorer. And the Rangers went out and signed him to a 2-year deal at $1.5 million a season. It's not an enormous contract, but I do feel like there's probably some pressure on the Rangers and Drury to justify that deal. So that being the case, and knowing that Radish could be claimed on waivers, whereas Berard could not be. That's a decision that they made. I don't think too many people right now would feel like Radish is a better option than Berard. I know there might be some people that go to bat for Radish and just say, well, you know what? He's the veteran. He's been around a while. You brought him in for a reason. Give him a chance. And there's some truth to that. There's some merit to that. But I just find it hard to believe that he's a better option right now than Brett Berard. My own personal opinion. You guys let me know what you think as well, though. Berard last season as a rookie had a pretty strong showing for somebody that was playing on a dumpster fire of a team. I mean, he was out there competing every night, scored a decent amount of goals as well. And I do think eventually he'll be back. I think it's only a matter of time, but the Rangers are going to give these veterans a chance to show what they can do, at least early in the season. Hopefully some of them deliver. And if some of them don't, there's a lot of hungry prospects there pretty much ready to take their place at a moment's notice. But yep, that's where things stand. Very, very excited to be at the start of Ranger hockey here. Can't wait to talk to you guys about the first game of the season. Training camp and the preseason, that's all well and good, and that's fun, and I enjoy going through the NHL calendar with all you guys, but, man, there's no substitute for Ranger hockey, the Ranger hockey that actually counts, and we got a rivalry game to kick things off against the Penguins. It's been a tough year plus for Ranger fans. Let's just see this team start 1-0. Let's just go see them play a strong game against the Penguins. Let's get the Garden rocking. Let's just have a 1-0 start to the season, and we'll take it from there. Let's go Rangers, and thank you guys as always for tuning in. If you would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @jchick17. Once again, @jchik17, and definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.